生男孩了就是个大喜啦，就是生女孩了就是小喜吧，也不能学成不喜，就是大小喜，哎，生了男孩以后就是学在咱们这个家里了，要是生了女孩嘞，就是出家了啊，不在咱们这个家。孙子跟孙女2个，那个是个大喜，这个是个小喜，就这个意思。
In many areas of the Chinese countryside, a woman's marriage is called 找婆家, finding a mother-in-law's house. A husband refers to his wife as 我家里的, the person inside my home. And when a woman is described as 没孩子, childless, it often really means that she does not have a son. In Longbo, a village about 400 miles southwest of Beijing, young people are gradually abandoning these expressions. But the ancient traditions of male dominance fade slowly. I'm an American born and raised in Beijing. In 1971, I came to Longbo for the first time. During several visits since then, I've made friends with many women. Although we live in different worlds, their suffering and their strength, their frustrations and their joys remain with me. Conditions and customs vary greatly in China's vast countryside. No one village can represent all of China. Yet the personal experiences of these women in Longbo village offer a glimpse of the forces that have shaped the lives of peasant women for most of this century. Ling Qiao is one of the few women in Longbo who graduated from high school. Her education enabled her to see things somewhat differently from many other women in the village. Contact between young men and women was more tolerated in high school than in any other rural setting. And it was there that Ling Qiao met and fell in love with her husband, Ming Quan. But their romance still caused great embarrassment when it was discovered.
My classmates noticed that we were close. They didn't say anything, but they gave me funny looks. One day after school, I was walking home with my girlfriends. The boys were way ahead of us. Suddenly, I saw carved on a tree trunk, Ling Qiao and Ming Quan are a couple. I was so angry. I took out my pocket knife and scratched a huge X over it. After high school, I didn't want to get married right away. I wanted to do something useful for my village first. But Ming Quan's father made a big fuss. He was very old. One day, he refused to get out of bed. He said he would just lie there until he died unless his son got married. So Ming Quan begged and begged me, and I finally agreed. My parents were very much against it because they had heard that his father was terribly feudal-minded, an old diehard. After a lot of discussion, my father finally agreed. He said, "Well, it's your choice. If it doesn't work out, don't blame me for not finding you the right family." So I got married. And it turned out that his father wasn't sick at all. He got up and went to work every day. A few years later, I walked by the high school on my way to a fair. I remembered that tree with our names carved in it and looked for it. Our names had grown this big.
Like most rural women, Ling Qiao moved in with her husband's family. They live with Ming Quan's mother, who is 60 years old, and his father, who is 77. Last year, Ling Qiao gave birth to a boy. The extended family shares 3 rooms and a kitchen built around a courtyard. Not every young woman plays as large a role as Ling Qiao did in choosing her husband. Parents and go-betweens usually initiate marriage discussions. Then the couple involved makes a decision after very limited contact with one another. This situation is different from the old days when young people had no say at all in their own marriage. Is it easy to meet a young man on your own?
I wasn't in school long enough. Only got through 6th grade. I left school when I was 13.
Yes, she was too young then. Now she's working in a village workshop with other young girls. It's not easy for her to meet anyone. It's different in factories and schools, but around here we're not used to young men and women getting together on their own. Everyone would badmouth them. Anyway, when a daughter grows up, you don't want her to run around wild.
So you have to make arrangements for your daughter.
Yes. The parents talk things over and find a suitable match. Then if the young people agree, they get married.
Before you were engaged, how well did you know your fiancé?
We didn't have much to do with each other. We never talked by ourselves, and we never went to a movie together. If you're not engaged, then who is he to you? Who are you to him? Running to each other's houses like that. That's really indecent. Once you're engaged, then everyone knows so-and-so is going to marry so-and-so, and then it's all right.
Once you're engaged and get to know the man, what if you don't like him?
You break off the engagement.
That's allowed?
Yes, but it's not good. People will say, why did you get engaged in the first place? Didn't you know what you were getting into?
Can you two sit a little closer? Did you know each other when you were kids?
Yes, we did.
Are you two engaged?
Yes, I guess we're engaged. We haven't had a ceremony, but everything's decided.
Getting married in the old days must have been quite different from today. Can you tell me how you got married?
Oh, you tell her. I can't talk as well as you can.
Oh, I can't talk about that stuff. Ask her. She knows how to talk. What I say will be about me, not about you. You can speak for all of us.
How can I speak for you?
I sure don't know how to talk about that.
Well, who found a husband for you?
An old matchmaker. She came to our house and told my parents, now you'd better find a home for her.
Did the matchmaker talk to you?
No, she only talked with the older folks. If your parents agreed to the match, then that was that.
She didn't talk to you at all?
She'd never talked to me. I was so young I didn't know what was going on.
She was only this big. Not much taller than that little boy.
That young and your marriage was already decided?
Yes, our families arranged it. In those days, you had no say. Once your parents got it settled, that was that.
How was your marriage brought up?
I don't know.
Who brought it up? Did the two of you talk?
I don't know how to talk about this.
You don't know? How can you be engaged if you don't know how it was brought up?
Well, I knew her before I joined the army, but we were too young then.
So your parents thought it was a good match and started talking?
Yes. Our mothers were working together, and they talked about it. I was still in the army.
So you didn't know all this was going on?
That's right.
Your parents could see the man, but you couldn't?
Oh, no way.
What unmarried girl went to see a man? How shameful.
You didn't see him until you arrived at your wedding.
So you didn't know what kind of person he was?
That's right. Whether he was blind or crippled, you were stuck with him.
During the wedding, a rowdy crowd would hang around and shout, "New bride, fill my pipe." So you'd go around filling their pipes. That was when you discovered who your husband was.
Since you and your husband were strangers when you married, what happened if you couldn't get along?
Couldn't get along? Well, you fought. No divorce in those days.
What if you just couldn't live together?
Then you just fought some more. There was no way to separate. Of course, the man could get rid of you. Send you back to your mother's house.
Did that happen in this village?
Oh, it was rare. Very few people separated. You just fought your whole life long. What else could you do? No divorce in those days.
Weddings are usually held after harvest or at New Year's. The groom's family hires a band and prepares a feast. The groom rides on horseback to the bride's village. He is accompanied by 4 people from his family. They take extra horses to bring back the bride and a few of her relatives. Once back in the groom's village, the procession stops at every street corner while the band plays to attract crowds. In the past, women generally married into other villages. Recently, it has become more common for women in Longbo to marry within the village. But a woman still must move to her husband's house. When the bride arrives, the groom's friends dangle a paper butterfly over the courtyard gate, and the groom has to lift the bride up to catch it. This is the only time the villagers see the couple touch one another. From then on, they will always stay at least a few feet apart in public. Once the bride enters the courtyard, she goes to change her clothes. Then the feast begins. Close relatives, special friends, and the musicians are served meat dishes and hard liquor. The rest of the guests eat noodles. After the feast, the ceremony takes place. A friend of the groom reads a list of the relatives in the man's family. As each name is read, the couple bows. Did you have to bow at your wedding?
Yes. But I didn't give a damn. I didn't wait for them to push me down.
Of course, when the time comes, I'll have to bow. This is the custom. Every family has these rules. No woman can avoid it. You have to do it.
Weddings are occasions when men get together and have a good time. They play drinking games and push each other to get drunk. It is very rare for a woman to join in the merrymaking.
On the wedding night, a rowdy crowd gathers in the newlyweds' room. Even if you don't like it, there's nothing you can do. Everyone who comes that night is a good friend of the groom. If you're too embarrassed and try to run away, then your husband will be very angry. But usually you can't run away because they watch you really closely.
The newlyweds aren't comfortable together. That's why there's all that rowdiness on the first night. The groom's parents are afraid that the two of them will be shy. So for 9 days after the wedding, the newlyweds are not allowed to lock their door. The groom's friends can come in and loosen them up.
Does everyone want to get married?
Oh, everyone wants to get married. A man gets a wife to open the door. That's what getting a wife is for. Open the door and establish descendants.
What does opening the door mean?
Without future generations, doesn't your house simply close down? The more children, the more prosperity. You give birth to as many as your fate has in store. Now the state wants fewer children. There's birth control.
I believe in birth control. When my kids don't listen to me, I cuss them out and say, "Too bad birth control came too late for you." Will I ever stop having trouble with these kids? They were so naughty when they were little. Now they're grown up and won't work at all. I have to work with a sore arm. I do all the field work by myself.
Your sons don't work?
They don't work.
Why not?
They don't want to work in the fields.
What do they want to do?
Oh, a nice city job. Not one of them wants to work in the fields.
In the last 35 years, China's population has increased from 400 million to over 1 billion. If this expansion goes unchecked, the nation will face severe food shortages by the end of the century. The government is adopting increasingly drastic measures to reduce population growth. But country people still refuse to accept a smaller family if it does not include at least one son. Why do people in the countryside prefer boys?
A boy is good. He can open the door and have more children. But a girl, she'll grow up and leave. You've raised her for someone else.
That's right. The boy stays home. The boy brings in a wife.
A daughter's not family, she's only a relative. Once she grows up and marries, she's no more than a relative, is she? There's an old saying, an unfilial son will at least fetch water for you, but a filial daughter will only bring you mouths to eat your food. That's the truth. Your daughter brings her husband and her kid, 3 mouths to feed.
In the factories and mines, workers are allowed only one child, whether it's a boy or a girl. But there's no way this policy can be enforced in the countryside, because we're farmers. In the factories, they earn a regular salary. But here, everyone works the land. You just can't do without a son. A daughter will leave the family when she gets married. How can you survive without a son?
A few years ago, a woman had to be sterilized after the 3rd child. Now it's after the 2nd child. If she has a boy and a girl, or 2 boys, then she definitely has to be sterilized. But if she only has 2 girls, she can wait for the time being.
How many children do you have?
I have a boy and a girl.
So your situation is ideal. Were you sterilized?
I was unable to bear children. I adopted them.
Since you've got what you wanted, do people resent you for telling them to stop trying?
Yes, some women get very nasty and say, you're barren, so you don't want us to have babies either. It hurts me a lot. Why should I want to control them? But this is my responsibility. This is a state policy issued directly from the central government. It's not that I have anything personal against these women. Each team has a woman responsible for birth control. Wen Ying is in charge of the whole village.
Wen Ying's daughter-in-law just had a baby girl. According to the local birth control regulations, she still has another chance to try for a boy. Is your daughter-in-law going to keep trying for a boy?
I'm in charge of birth control here, and I can't break the rules. If the government allows it because country people need a son, she'll have another baby in a few years.
Right after Wen Ying got her daughter-in-law, people began to talk. They said, once that daughter-in-law has her quota of kids, she'd better get sterilized. Otherwise, we'll smash up her house.
Most women are afraid the operation will ruin their health.
Why is birth control dependent on sterilizing women? Aren't there other methods?
Yes, a man can have an operation, but people here aren't used to the idea. They feel that women are just housewives. If a woman's health is ruined, it doesn't matter as much, since she stays home anyway. This is the attitude in China.
Women are expected to take all the physical risks of birth control. They are also subjected to tremendous psychological pressure. The birth control policy does not challenge the traditional attitudes which favor a son, nor does it address the social and economic conditions that make a son necessary. While the state restricts the number of children and the family demands a son, women are caught in a double bind. The problems women face today are rooted in a long-standing pattern of male dominance. In the past, the most obvious sign of this oppression was the practice of foot binding. This custom was officially banned early in this century, but it lingered on in rural areas for decades.
If I got into a fight with a woman, all I had to do was stomp on her feet and she'd be finished. She'd fall down. How could she ever win?
That's because she had bound feet?
Yes. One stomp and she'd hurt so much she'd just have to sit down.
So you had an advantage in fights, didn't you?
That's the way it was in the old feudal times.
How old were you when you had your feet bound?
6 years old.
The feet used to be really tiny. I found a shoe of hers that was only this long. Now her feet are larger because they've been unbound.
In the old days, no one wanted to marry a woman with big feet. Blind or lame, your feet had to be small. If these fingers were toes and this thumb was a big toe, the fingers would have been bound under like this. When I walk around all day, I'm actually stepping on my bent-over toes.
To bind a foot, you hold it tight and wind up the bindings. Only the big toe is left straight. Then you tie the binding around the ankle. I'll show you how it's done. Since I don't have binders anymore, I'll use my legging. My feet were first bound when I was 7, and they were much better looking than this. Look at this lump. When I was 11, which batch of soldiers was here then? Anyway, they came to ban foot binding. We were so scared we hid in the cornfields and everywhere. If we were caught, we'd be fined. So I let my feet out. Then I felt so ashamed of my big feet. If you want small feet, you bind them up like this. Wrap all around, cover every spot, and then tie them up. It caused terrible sores.
Pus ran out of the sores on my feet. It soaked through several layers of bindings and hardened into a crust. When I washed my feet, I had to soak them over and over to soften the crust before I could tear off the bindings. And skin and flesh got torn off with the cloth. Then later, my feet just became a slushy mess. The pain was unbearable. When my mother told me to walk on them, all I could do was cry. When I went to the outhouse, I couldn't walk. I had to crawl.
Were you willing to have your feet bound?
How could we not be willing?
Everyone else did it. People said tiny feet were good.
After a wedding, they'd show the bride off around the village. She'd sit in a cart with her legs crossed. Everyone gathered around. Some would shout, new bride, she's coming out to bow, eating steamed buns, oh, everyone knows how. Hey, let's see the feet. If the feet were big, they'd say, the face isn't half bad, but get a load of those feet. And they'd walk off. My red wedding shoes, they were this long. I was so ashamed. One day, my in-laws were sitting in the doorway. As I walked toward them, I overheard them saying, just look at this. The person hasn't shown up yet, and her 2 feet have already arrived. Those awful big feet. So I took a year and bound them up again.
Now young women run around and their feet don't hurt. When I'm on my feet all day, they bother me and I have to rest. But when I see this little guy, I forget how tired I am. I love him so much. I keep fussing around and taking care of him. Oh, I sure have suffered.
那爹老婆是会学呀，上了那地方。
我这哪是十里地，我就是那忙上的来了。
My village was 4 miles away. I was carried here in a sedan chair. My face was covered by a piece of cloth. I was scared. After the wedding, my older brother came to say goodbye. Stay here, he said. Don't get upset, and do as you're told. I pleaded, oh, please come back soon and take me home. And I started to cry. I was supposed to be 15 when I got married, but really I was only 13. In those days, women not married by age 16 were rare. Already at 11 or 12, you weren't allowed out of the house. Just look at young women today, running down the street with 2 long braids swishing behind their backs. We could never do that.
In the old days, we hardly ever got to see a new bride.
Why? Didn't I tell you? Women weren't allowed out of the house. Talk about being oppressed. Look at young women today, married in the morning and already running around wild in the afternoon. They really have a good time. A daughter-in-law had no right to speak. Her in-laws gave the orders. She didn't dare leave the house.
Since you came from another village, how could you get to know anyone if you didn't leave your husband's courtyard?
It was really hard. When you heard a vendor, that was your chance to go out. You had to ask your mother-in-law, Mother, the vendor's here. May I go out and buy a needle and some thread? She'd pull a long face like this. And then say, go ahead. She'd wait a long time before she'd let you go. And then you had to hurry back. Oh, I can't tell you how bad it was. We were really oppressed.
The many efforts to improve women's status since the turn of the century had little impact on the countryside. Then came the revolution of 1949, which the Chinese refer to as liberation. For women in Longbo, the revolution brought certain basic changes. They began to have a say in choosing their husbands. They could initiate a divorce. The revolution eliminated the very worst poverty and improved health care. The revolution also gave women the words to name their oppression. Among the new terms introduced into common speech was the word feudal. It is used mostly in reference to authoritarian family relationships. A tyrannical husband, mother-in-law, or parent is disapprovingly called a 老封建, an old feudal.
I got married right after liberation. Things were already much better. Still, I knew my duties as a daughter-in-law. I cooked and washed the dishes and so on. I didn't run around much outside the house. That was already the new society. I haven't experienced any real oppression. When I was a young girl, things were really feudal. Nowadays, when you get a daughter-in-law, you have to put her up on a pedestal. You pamper her. You don't dare to treat her badly or criticize her. She only does household chores when she feels like it. In our day, that wouldn't do.
In the past, a woman entered her husband's family as a stranger. The only secure emotional bond she could establish was with her son. Her son's marriage threatened that bond. The new daughter-in-law was often abused. Even today, tension between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law is common in rural families. But Ling Qiao and her mother-in-law are unusually close. They support each other in the family. In fact, it was only because of Ling Qiao's encouragement that her mother-in-law finally began to stand up for her own rights in the house.
I was pregnant twice before and had miscarriages. Most mothers-in-law are still very feudal. They think you're bad luck and say, what is a woman good for anyway besides having children? And you can't even do this one thing right? After my miscarriage, I was very sad. I also worried that my in-laws would be annoyed. I was so depressed I couldn't eat. But my mother-in-law was not so old-fashioned. She actually tried to comfort me. Don't worry, she said. It's not that you couldn't get pregnant. You just lost the baby. I felt so relieved.
So she's much more open-minded than the others.
I've suffered myself, so I know what it's like.
Many people warned me not to marry into this family. They said it was too feudal.
They said my old man was too feudal.
People said I would be sure to suffer. But I found that my mother-in-law was even more open-minded than most people. She's not feudal at all.
This family had a bad reputation in the village. Actually, it wasn't me. It was my old man. But now he's too old. He can't throw his weight around anymore. Ever since she married into this family, I've felt happy and free. I started going out to see operas. I've really risen up in the world.
Now that I've had this baby, she has more energy than ever. At mealtimes, she insists that I eat first while she takes care of my baby. I've really got it good here.
Longbo village has a population of over 2,000 people. The main crops are corn and wheat. In the past, most people made their living by farming, but women mainly worked inside the home. If they ventured out of their courtyards, they only went as far as the neighborhood millstone. In the 1950s, women gradually started to work in the collective fields and bring home an income. Their contribution to the family became measurable and their status improved. But until recently, daily pay rates for women were much lower than for men.
Men objected to women getting the same wages. They'd argue, "We men can carry the heavy grain sacks, can you?" When the men talked this way, I'd tell them off. You can't simply judge women on that one point. We women can give birth to babies, can you? I'd tease them like that and I'd tell them, it doesn't make sense just to look at one thing. After all, men don't carry heavy gunny sacks every day.
Later, the village implemented a piecework system to increase efficiency. But men were offended when some women earned more than they did under this system.
The pay for harvesting sorghum was based on the number of rows you cut. One day, Yu Qing and her team of women worked very fast. When they got to the end of the field, the men were still sitting around. But Yu Qing still had to fight the village accountant for higher pay. So I told the accountant, listen, the men were all sitting around while the women worked. Why shouldn't the women get more pay? The job of a women's leader is to stick up for women's rights. If she doesn't speak up, then the women will lose out.
Now we have piecework. Everyone gets the same rate for picking a row of corn. This is fair. Men are slower at this job than women. Often a woman earns 15 points a day, and a man only earns 10 points. So women like piecework.
It looks like only women are doing this job.
That's true. There's only one man, and he's in charge of recording work points. This year, most of the men took outside jobs to earn money. Farm work is left for the women.
Yes, only women work in the fields. Men take jobs and earn money.
Can women earn money too?
Yes, but women are tied down with children and housework. Very few women go out and earn money.
How come you can work in the fields when you have kids, but you can't take other jobs?
You go to the fields whenever you have a free moment, like after you've cooked the meals early in the morning or after sundown. If you work for money, you have to be on time. That's the difference.
I learned to drive a tractor. I even had a license. But now I don't know how anymore. There was no way to arrange the shifts. A woman and a man working together in the fields at night just sounds scandalous. The men didn't want to work with me. How could I keep that job? And when you leave the village on money-earning jobs, say hauling coal or dirt, if you have to stay somewhere overnight, it's very inconvenient for a woman. It just couldn't work. So I gave up.
Now that women have two jobs, one outside and the other inside the house, are men taking equal responsibility at home?
Oh, no, not in a lifetime. How can you ever have equality in housework? You think a woman can expect the man to help keep the kids neat and clean? He'll never do it. Why are children so close to their mothers and not their fathers? Because the mother takes care of them. She'll look at the kid. Oh, his jacket is dirty. I'd better wash it. And the man? He gets up in the morning and takes off. He'll never even notice.
In recent years, a highway and a railroad have been built near Longbo. Large factories moved into the area, and the village began to develop its own small-scale industry. One Longbo shop contracts work from a state-run saw blade factory. All the workers in the village shop are young, unmarried women. They polish saw blades. In the summer of 1982, the workers walked out.
In managing this shop, I tried different things. At first, only girls worked here. I thought men would be fine too, so I hired some men. But it didn't work out. Men are too strong and can't sit still for that long. They can't stand the confinement. It's like being in prison, sitting there like this. They can't take this kind of work.
The work is very dangerous. If you're not careful, your hand will hit against the wheel. And the wheel is very rough. Even if you bumped into a spare one lying around, you can get badly cut. And the stuff seems very poisonous. A cut takes a long time to heal. Now we're divided up into different shifts. But when we first started, we worked straight for 24 hours. It was endless, exhausting. The pay is good, but the work is very hard. The saw blade polishing shop makes more money than any other workshop in the village.
Why did you quit work and run away?
Last year, for 7 months, we didn't get our safety supplies or bonuses. We didn't get gloves, face masks, towels, and soap. Or our cash bonuses. So we got angry and ran off to Big Ridge Mountain.
For 5 or 6 months, the workers didn't get their safety supplies and subsidies. Since the village owned the saw blade factory, its income was used to finance the spring planting season. I tried to explain to the workers that there was a cash flow problem and that they would be paid later. But they thought I was lying to them. So I gave up explaining. And they were so narrow-minded and petty that they stopped working.
The manager came after us to go back to work. If he found you, it was hard to refuse, so the best way was to hide out for the day. A shutdown cost thousands of dollars. It's serious business. So we ran off and didn't come back till dark. The manager came and scolded us, hopping mad.
You see, if they didn't run away, the village leaders would be after them. Every one of the leaders got called upon to get these girls back to work. If the girls stayed in their own houses, one might have refused to go back to work while another might have been pressured into agreeing. If they didn't stick together, they would lose out.
I called a meeting, but couldn't find any of the girls. Where did they go? I went to house after house, and they were nowhere to be found. We looked for them all through the night and all the next day.
In a state-owned factory, a walkout would be regarded as counter-revolutionary. But a village workshop operates like a family enterprise. The manager of the Longbo saw blade shop is related to many of the workers, and the young women turn over their pay to their parents. Although the workers were unhappy about benefits and working conditions, they were reluctant to confront the manager directly. Running away brought the issue to a head.
That night, we were gathered together for a meeting. The manager came, and the first one he called on was me. "Well, girl, are you going to get back to work or not?" "Get going," he yelled. But I didn't dare move. If I went and the others didn't, they would all blame me. I was afraid. I just sat there. He turned to one and then another, but couldn't get anyone to move. So he went to get help from the village head.
When I arrived in the courtyard, all the girls were sitting together. They were silent and pouting. I asked, "Are you going back to work or not?" They said, "Sure, we'll go back. But can we work without face masks? It's cold and there's no heat. Is that going to be taken care of?" They brought up all their grievances. I tried to persuade the manager, saying, "All right, they go back to work, and you agree to do your part at the same time. Don't make it into a contest to see who gives in first. Don't get bogged down in this."
I was angry, very angry. I got the girls together and fired one of them. I talked it over with the village leaders. I also suspended a few. The others had to go back to work, or they would all be fired. So I dealt with the troublemakers. The girls who were suspended were allowed back in a few days. The girl who was fired came back after 6 months. As long as she recognized her mistake and was willing to change, we let her come back. Now they're all back at work. Everything's fine.
He agreed to our demands. Only then did we go back to work. After that, he fired a few girls, but production went down. If he hired new people, he'd have to train them. It would take a long time before they could do as good a job. So he had to call back the ones he fired. When I get married, though, I'll quit that job. It's really not a pleasant place to work. I'll only do it for a few more years for the sake of my family. Once I marry and leave home, I'll quit.
跟爷爷再见，爷在那儿嘞，爷在那儿嘞，快跟爷再见，咱去唱戏。那不是爷，爷在那儿嘞，我叫，行啊，那不是爷，叫爷，那不是爷。爷爷那了，再见，跟爷再见呗，再见，快，快点，跟爷再见。哎呀，磕头嘞，我会再见。拿出去了。 老条了。那谁要讲了？
For country people, cultural life still centers around the traditional village fair. It takes place every 2 or 3 weeks in different locations. One of the biggest attractions at the fair is the opera. It's free and it's performed all day long.
She loves to listen to this.
Often at night I can't fall asleep, and then I wake up before dawn. I thought it would be so nice if I could listen to some opera. So I asked the children to buy me this. I said, I'll raise pigs for a whole year, and you buy me one of these.
We promised last year to buy her a tape recorder. So she raised a few pigs, sold 2 of them, and we bought this. She listens to it all the time.
I love to listen to opera, but they don't listen to that stuff.
刘师爷，他们都走了，您请出来吧。
Life is so great now. I've never had it so good before. When I was young, my family was poor. My father wanted to sell me. He said, I'll sell my daughter to whoever comes up with $200. And this old duffer here came up with the money.
Back then, I paid silver coins.
My father bought grain with the money. Other people said, you're going to marry a much older man. But what could I do? I was already sold. I couldn't refuse, so I agreed to come take a look at this place. If it was no good, I wouldn't stay. Was he good to you? Good or bad, I depended on my own work. I just endured everything waiting for my 2 sons to grow up. Oh, it kills me to talk about the past. I wore the same 2 homespun jackets my whole life. Now they're worn out and I don't wear them anymore. I wove cloth and I tried to bring up my children. Now they've grown up, and look at what they eat. Look at what they wear. It's like living in paradise now.
As the daylight faded, I had to end my conversation with Ling Qiao's mother-in-law. The story of how she was sold to her husband made me want to find out more about her past. But the next day, she refused to talk. When I asked why, she became very upset. I got bullied for talking about the past. My old man and my son scolded me. They said I had no sense of shame. They said I'd lost face for the family.
They just think it doesn't sound good to say you were sold here, that's all.
Well, I'm mad as hell. I wasn't even talking about this family, the Wongs. I was talking about my own family, the Chins. And just for that, my sons picked on me. If it weren't for my sons, I would have left this family, even if I had to beg for a living. If I hadn't come here, my father would have sold me as a concubine for a higher price. He yelled at my mother, slapping his thighs. I told you not to make that other deal while I was gone. If you'd sold her to the other people, we'd have more millet to eat, more money to spend. That was how I came here. And when I talked about it yesterday, my son scolded me. Boy, that makes me mad. I told them, you don't know how much your mother has suffered. In those days, I cried and cried until I had no more tears. I gave birth to 8 children, and I cried 8 times. At night, I found half my pillow wet. But who cared about me? Who'd even cook me a bowl of hot gruel? When I had my second son, my first baby was lying there, crying all the time. I was crying day and night. I couldn't take it anymore. I thought, why should I have another? I had a hard enough time with only one, so I smothered the new baby. I pressed the quilt over him. He was very strong and struggled. I thought he was dead, but after an hour he groaned. Blood came out of his mouth and soaked the quilt before he died. Then I buried him. I killed my own baby. I had nothing to eat myself, and the other baby was crying. How could I possibly stand one more? I had to kill my own baby.
Wasn't there someone in the village who could help you?
Who'd come and take care of me? If anyone came, my old man would say I was a slut. No one dared come near this place. Did he ever treat me like a human being? Never. In all the years I've been here, I've never depended on him for a thing, I'm telling you. He never gave me anything. I waited on him all the time, and he said, I paid good money for you. Shouldn't you wait on me? Well, it kills me to wait on him. Now I'm old and I've brought up my children. I only live for my sons.
That's all over with. Things are fine now.
Of course things are fine now, but when my sons give me grief, I just can't stand it.
Oh, don't get too upset. The way they talk, well, they're your own children.
My own children. Pretty awful. Their father has bullied me all my life. Now that I'm in the hands of my children, I still have to take this? If I ran around outside all day like some women, then I might put up with this. But I never went anywhere, not even to the village store. And I still have to listen to this? Now things are the way they ought to be. Ever since Ling Chao married into the family, I've been liberated. Whenever an opera is playing, I go. I've really come up in the world. I feel like I'm in paradise. But what does my old man say? You've gotten so uppity you don't know your place anymore.
The isolation and tragedies experienced by Ling Qiao's mother-in-law are no longer common in the lives of rural Chinese women. The changes in their status over the past 30 years have been among the most dramatic in the world. But like women everywhere, their problems have no simple solution. One thing seems clear, however. Many improvements may take place in the countryside. But as long as a woman must leave her own family, marry into a man's household, and continue his family line, she will be considered a small happiness from the day she is born.